Well, good morning. We will start with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Brian Prince is the pastor at Greater New Bethlehem Temple. He's going to lead us in the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilman Griner if he'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. But at this time, would everyone please stand?
Greetings to all those who are in attendance and deference to this council. Honor to our city leader, the 36th mayor of Oklahoma City, and grace and peace to you, Mayor, and your future endeavors. The invocation. Eternal God, our Father, you who rule and super rule our world, we thank you for this opportunity and privilege to stand. You told us in your word, canonized in 1 Timothy 2, first of all, that supplications and prayers and intercessions and giving of thanks should be made for all men, for kings, and for all that are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. With that divine instruction and insight and inspiration, we pray for these, our leaders, this legislative body that govern this Oklahoma City territory, these leaders of these 8 wards, Councilman Griner and Shadid, McAtee, Stone, Greenwell, Salyer, Pettis, and Stonecipher. Give them the wisdom to produce the strategy to get the victory concerning the 7 priorities that they have to promote safe and secure and thriving neighborhoods, to develop a transportation system that works for all residents. Give them wisdom to maintain strong financial management and to enhance recreational opportunities and community wellness. Help every endeavor to encourage a robust local economy and to uphold high standards for all city services, to continue to pursue social and criminal justice initiatives. Father, we ask now, don't allow the introduction or the initiation or the implementation of anything that binds the hands of those that are in ministry or in social services. We pray for our mayor, yours and ours. You've allowed him and put him up now 4 times, God. Impart to him of your spirit, the spirit of wisdom, the spirit of counsel, understanding and might, knowledge and the fear of the Lord. As we give the benediction now and speak this blessing upon this council, the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have multiple reasons to thank our city employees today. First of all, those of you who got here a few minutes early could have heard the Oklahoma City employee choir serenading us with holiday songs out in the foyer. And we also want to acknowledge that our city employees gave generously this year to the Heart of the City campaign. We have a resolution. I'm going to ask the clerk to read it, and I know we have some of the leaders of our Heart of the City effort. Would everyone that partook or was involved in the leadership effort, if they would come up here and stand with me, I would appreciate it, and I'll ask the clerk to read the resolution.
Whereas Heart of the City is an annual fundraising campaign during which department coordinators rally city employees to raise funds for local charities under 4 partner federations: the United Way of Central Oklahoma, Allied Arts, the Regional Food Bank of Oklahoma, and Community Health Charities. Whereas Heart of the City department coordinators dedicate a portion of their time to the campaign from August to November, organizing fundraisers and rallies to raise awareness and encourage their co-workers to donate. The Heart of the City's 4 partner federations are an essential part of the campaign's success. working with the city and more than 100 local charities serving residents in need. Whereas by giving to the Heart of the City campaign, employees are helping the less fortunate, feeding the hungry, supporting a vibrant arts community, and funding medical research. Whereas during this year's Heart of the City campaign, 3,240 employees raised $567,879. Whereas the Heart of the City campaign has raised more than $5 billion for local charities since 2007, helping fulfill the unmet needs in Oklahoma City and topping the $500,000 mark for 7 years in a row. Whereas this council desires to recognize the Heart of the City coordinators and city employees for their dedication to the residents of the city of Oklahoma City. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend city employees, department coordinators, and the federations for their generosity and hard work in making Oklahoma City a better place to live.
Let's show our appreciation to our city employees and their generosity this holiday season. And up here we have representatives from, I believe, each of the city departments, and then as well we have recipients of some of the major receivers of the United Way funds. And Debbie's here, who coordinates the entire effort for United Way. Jennifer's here on behalf of the food bank. Thank each and every one of you for participating this year. Let me go over these numbers again because, as you can imagine, I'm very proud. We had over 3,000 employees participate in this Heart of the City giving campaign, and they raised $567,000 on behalf of the greater needs of Oklahoma City. So let's show a round of applause to our city employees and thank them for all that they did. Thank you all.
Move the item.
Need to vote.
All in favor say aye.
Aye. Mayor, while you're coming up, I just want to recognize Debbie Hampton. It's her birthday today. So can we give her a big round of applause? Happy birthday, Debbie.
We're on item 3, B, C, and D of the council agenda. I'll look for a motion on the appointments. All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 4 is the Journal of Council Proceedings. 4A is to receive the journal for December 5th. 4B is to approve the journal for November 21st. Is there a
Move the
motion?
items.
All right, comments or questions on the journal? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And item 5 is request for uncontested continuances.
Mayor, just two this morning. On page 21, item 9J1E, 816 Southeast 49th Street, we ask that that be stricken. The owner has repaired. And on page 22, under item 9K1I, 9628 Southeast 29th Street, we ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured.
All right, any other requests for uncontested continuances? Item 6 is revocable permits. We only have one today, and that is a request from the OKC Martin Luther King Jr. Coalition to hold the Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Parade, and R.L. Doyle is here to tell us more about the event. Good morning, R.L. We will need your name and address for the record.
Okay, good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is R.L. Doyle, P.O. Box 53084, OKC 73152 on the zip.
Tell us about the event.
Well, I'm very happy to report that we are ready to go. Our only concern right now is watching the street repair, but I'm hoping that will be up to snuff by the time we come downtown. So, but all of our entries are ready, our personnel are ready, and I think we're going to have a good event, provided the weather is okay.
I'm sure you will. The event is going to be January 15th. It'll be in the heart of downtown, going up Automobile Alley and some related areas. How can people get more involved if they'd like to be a part of it?
Just give us a call. area code 405-306-8440.
All right, and that's the Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Parade, January 15th. Thanks, RL, for all the work you and your others do to make this possible.
Very good, thank
All
you.
right, we have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. All right, we'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. We have, looks like 9 items here, and I think Craig's got a presentation for us.
Craig Freeman is here this morning, and we have audits on several different bodies this morning, and he's going to cover all of them right now with the
Okay.
PPA and the EAT and the MFA and the city council, or the
Thank you. Yeah, we have 4 financial statements that are on today, that we have financial reports. We have the Public Property Authority, the Municipal Facilities Authority, the Environmental Assistance Trust, and then the city's comprehensive annual financial report. And you'll see in the packet that with the city's comprehensive annual financial report, there's also the single audit report, which has the report of federal grants and federal and state grants, and it's prepared as well. These are audited financial statements. Our external auditors are AGH out of Wichita, Kansas, and we've had a very good audit this year. Appreciate the work that they do. We did receive an unmodified opinion on the audit, and an unmodified opinion basically means that it's a clean audit, and that's true of the comprehensive annual financial report as well as 14 other related trusts in those financial reports. We've got a clean audit on those reports. In addition to that, there were no material weakness findings or significant deficiency findings in any of the audits. And so it's really a great reflection. I did ask our accounting staff to come in today and to be here, our accounting team that leads the preparation of these reports, and I'd ask them to stand if they would, everyone that's on the accounting team. And I appreciate the work that they do. It's behind the scenes, but it really is a reflection of work that they do with financial staff throughout the city and in various city departments. And it's work that really is behind the scenes. It's one of those things where you don't hear a lot about what's happening with your accounting unless there's a problem. And so I think not hearing a lot about that is really good, but I do appreciate the work that these folks do, and having clean audits, having no findings within our audits is really a reflection of the great work that they do, and I appreciate this team. Very much. Thank you all. Real quickly, I'm just going to hit highlights within each one of these. Net position is one area that is difficult when you look at all this financial information to really take one particular measure and say this is a measure that tells us the condition of the city or how we're doing or condition of a particular trust. But I'm going to focus on net position because it used to be referred to as net assets, and it basically looks at all of your assets or resources less your liabilities or your obligations and kind of your position of where you stand. And so I'll look at that in each one of these. First, within the MFA, you can go to that next slide. In the MFA, one more. Very good. In the MFA, the net position is $35 million, and this is basically unchanged from last year. The MFA provides for services that really help to support city operations. 2 of the largest funds that are in the MFA are the Health Insurance Fund and the Workers' Compensation Fund. And so basically it's unchanged with a net position of $35 million. In the Public Property Authority, this trust primarily supports the cost and some operations for city facilities and properties. It includes some like the golf system, fairgrounds, natural gas contracts, the SMG contract, and public event charges. The net position is $74 million. This is actually a decrease from last year of about $6.7 million. Most of the change that we've seen within the Public Property Authority is in the depreciation of capital assets. And I think one of the things to think about with the Public Property Authority is it supports operations and it supports facilities, but in most cases, with the exception of golf, in most cases, it's not showing the full reflection of all the financials. And fairgrounds is a good example where, we just finished the exhibit center that's at the fairgrounds. That's with MAPS funds. That's actually an asset that shows up on the city's records. And so this helps to support these, but doesn't show a full accounting of all the operations for fairgrounds, for instance. Golf does have the full operations within the PPA as a part of the PPA, but generally this is supporting city facilities and operations. In the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust, the net position is $55 million. And Environmental Assistance Trust provides for solid waste pickup and disposal throughout the city. The $55 million net position is an increase of $7.3 million, and it's really the result of net income, where it's a very, very strong operating position, very strong financial position for the the Environmental Assistance Trust. And the last one I'll focus on is the comprehensive annual financial report, our net position, and this really combines all funds and operations of the city, as well as what are referred to as blended component units. And like the trusts that are on today, because of the fact that the council sits at the board for these trusts, it becomes blended as a part of our overall financial statements. The Zoo Trust is also included in that. The net position is $2.3 billion, and this is an increase of $167 million, or 8% from FY16, and it's primarily due to increases in capital assets. And the accounting team will tell you there are hundreds of different, maybe thousands of different transactions that are going on that go into this, many different changes in various areas, but the most significant change is the increase in the capital assets. On the next slide, I think this just shows the net position for the government-wide statements in the comprehensive annual report, and it just shows how it's changed over a few years. So when we're looking at net position, it's important for us to think about where we stand, where our position is today, but how it's changed. And you can see that it decreased in 2015, and a part of that decrease was there was a change in accounting standards. The most significant effect from that decrease, or the cause of that decrease, was a change in accounting standards where in 2015 we had to start recognizing the unfunded liability of any pensions of any city employees. So it includes our city-managed pension system, or it's not managed by the city, but the city pension system that is for the management staff and for general pay plan employees, but also for those systems that are managed by the state or through the state for police officers and firefighters. And we took on a significant unfunded liability from those systems, and that dropped our net position. And I just point that out because we have seen this continue to increase coming out of that, but going into next year, there's a new accounting standard that will require us to recognize the unfunded liability of other post-employment benefits. And for us, that's retiree health insurance. Last year, you all approved some changes in retiree health insurance that would help to manage that liability and eventually in the future would eliminate that unfunded liability, but it's going to be many years down the road before we see that. So next year, I expect to see our net position drop again, not because anything's changed financially within the city, but because of having to recognize that liability on our statements. On the next slide, I just wanted to talk a little bit about fund balance because we talk about fund balance a lot in the general fund. The general fund's our largest operating fund, and in this you see on the top is the GAAP basis fund balance, and that is a modified accrual basis of accounting, and you can see that's had a continued decrease. We did increase that going into 15. It dropped off in 16 really primarily because of the downturn in the economy and the challenges that we were seeing within our revenues. We saw a continued decrease in that GAAP basis fund balance, that modified accrual basis in this year, not because of financial situation as much as not because of our operating position, but more because of recognizing the market value of investments, that most of our investments we're buying and holding till their maturity, and so it doesn't, market value from day to day doesn't affect that. We do have one portfolio, our operating portfolio, that is managed actively, but the only time we're selling investments in that is when there's an opportunity for a gain. So recognizing this market value, I don't believe is something of concern. There's a decrease in market value because yields have been going up, and that means the investments that you're holding, their value is a little bit lower, and so it's a decrease slightly. I also added on here the budgetary fund balance, and budgetary fund balance is called a modified cash basis of accounting, and it's closer to cash, and it's really what we talk to and what we set the council's financial policies on, of where we target that 8 to 15%. It's really looking at the budgetary fund balance as it compares to our budgeted revenues. And you can see in this one that we saw a decrease in 2016 as we did spend down some fund balance in responding to the downturn in the economy, but it went up slightly going into 17. And I just point that out. It's a couple of $1 million higher in 17, so basically stayed flat. That's really showing the operating position. And I think it's a reflection, too, of the great work that our departments did as they dug in and looked at ways to reduce costs I mean, it did have an impact on services, and we're trying to respond to that as we're coming out and seeing revenues starting to grow again. But it is one that it's one you really have to watch closely, both on the GAAP basis as well as the budgetary basis, and it's one that the rating agencies and investors look at closely. When I think about our financial statements and what we provide in our financial statements, those documents are probably, while you and I may look at them, it's difficult to consume all that information that's there. The rating agencies and investors who are looking at buying the city's bonds look at those very closely. So it's a really important document. The work that this team does is very important for the city, and I do appreciate that. I wanted to point out one more thing before I conclude, and that is that we submit our annual financial report every year to the Government Finance Officers Association, and they develop best practices in financial reporting as one of the services they provide that we try to follow, and we submit our documents, and they go through a review process, like a peer review process. And in FY16, we've submitted our FY17 documents, but they won't be reviewed for a few months. But in FY16, that was the 34th consecutive year that we've received the award for excellence in financial reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association, saying that we're meeting these recognized best practices in financial reporting. And again, it's credit to this team and the work that they do that brings us this. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions. As you see these documents, I know I don't expect anyone to sit down and read through these documents, but if there's something you look at within the documents and you have, except for Councilman Greenwell, that's right, forgot to point that out. But if you look at these and you have a question, we'd be happy to work with you to answer your questions or get with our accounting team and help to get answers to you. So I do appreciate your leadership and the strong financial position of the city.
Craig, congratulations on that award, too, for the 34th straight year. That's quite an achievement. Yes, David?
Your Honor, one other important issue that Craig didn't mention, along with all the others, and these are really significant, all the accolades that he and his staff obtained, was the fact that we're designated as a low-risk audit, which means the outside auditing firm has to perform less procedures just because of the internal controls and the overall efficiency and operations of the accounting department. So another great attribute or reason to recognize the accounting department here. They've done a terrific job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah. We need a motion on the MFA. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. All right, we'll adjourn the OCMFA and convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. 4 items here. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions about the PPA? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCPPA and convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. Just 3 items here. All right, comments or questions on the EAT? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCEAT and reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket. All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any individual considerations?
Mayor, we do have Shannon Entz here from Planning Department to do a presentation on O, which is the Strong Neighborhood Initiative.
All right.
I would like to talk about item R as well, please.
Okay, Todd.
A, C like Charlie.
A, C, okay.
I'll go ahead and get started if that's okay. I'm Shannon Ensom with the City Planning Department. This is Jennifer Sylvester. We call her my partner in good with S&I. This is an exciting day today. We have 2 neighborhoods that have been recommended for the Strong Neighborhoods Initiative program, which is within the Planning Department. As you know, we've had 3 neighborhoods and great success in 3 neighborhoods that we're currently working in right now. Classon's North Highland Park, Classen Tenpin, and Culbertson's East Highland. So we're super excited to be able to present to you today the recommendations from a review panel for the 2 new neighborhoods. I'm going to pause just a moment. Here we go. Can you Jennifer, you might go up to Okay, sorry about that. Okay. And so first of all, again, thank you again for the commitment to the Strong Neighborhoods Initiative over the last 5 years. We do believe there's been great success with this program. We've thoroughly enjoyed working with all neighborhoods. And so now we're ready to talk about what the S&I mission is. So the S&I mission is right here on your screen, is to tip declining neighborhoods towards long-term economic sustainability through rigorous community engagement, holistic planning strategies, and thoughtful public and private investments. This is where we're able to work within the neighborhoods. So we have this large boundary. Since we utilize funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, we utilize those funds within this orange area, which is a large portion in the core part of Oklahoma City. Those are the 3 neighborhoods we're working in right now. So with the S&I program, we have some intended outcomes. We want to make sure that we are engaging neighborhood groups, make sure that we're decreasing turnover in the schools, or at least working with the school district to do that, and increase homeownership and private investment. We also want to increase property values and stabilize the market. We want to reduce vacant properties and decrease crime, or the perception of crime, as much as possible. And we do this with all of our partner departments. We have tools that we utilize that are HUD-eligible programs. We utilize all of these right now, and we do suspect that we will, or do expect to utilize most, if not all of these, as well as more tools for this next round of S&I. Currently in the neighborhoods we're in now, here's some information about those. Some of the private and public investment. We have 3 main indicators. We have several indicators, but 3 that we utilize the most in kind of gauging the success of the program. And private and public investment is one of them. One of our goals is to have a 4-to-1 ratio in the neighborhoods of private to public investment. As you can see, Classen Tenpin and Classen's North Highland, there's a significant amount of improvements in the investments in Classen Tenpin. Class North Highland Park is doing really well as well. Culbertson East Highland is behind a little bit. It is staff's recommendation that we continue to work in Culbertson East Highland for the next 1 or 2 years. There are several new projects that are coming online, and we do believe that once some of those projects are kind of started and finished, that we'll be able to kind of say that they are past that tipping point, and then we can move forward. Another part of the justification for requesting to go ahead and continue in Culbertson East Highland is this number, the crime. As you can see in Classen Tenpin, the numbers have gone down about 48% in that neighborhood since we started working in there. And Class North Highland Park is such a small neighborhood, they haven't really had a large crime problem, so their numbers are pretty insignificant. Culbertson East Highland keeps going up and down. So we're going to continue to work with the police department and see if we can get this number down. Home sale prices is another one that we want to continue to see increase. Our threshold for that, or what our measure for success, is around 5% over a 3-year period. We want to see this continue in Culbertson. As you can see, the other 2 neighborhoods have exceeded that. So the selection process and methodology for the new neighborhoods. Again, we have the same mission. Our goal for this was to make sure that this process was inclusive, that it was transparent, and that it was supportable by the review panel, as well as the planning team, departments, and you all. This is our list of support staff, the planning team members, and if any of them are here, can you wave your hands? The planning team, I'm sorry, the review panel members, can you wave your hands? Yeah, we had a fantastic group of individuals that represent a wide area of Oklahoma City and different organizations, and we were absolutely thrilled to have such professionals as part of this group. The selection timeline, restarted research and meeting back in May. We've had about 8 meetings with the planning team. We started meeting with the S&I review panel in August, and so we've met 5 times, and they have most recently, in December 6th, made their final selection that they're recommending to you today. So the basic eligibility, we started with basic eligibility when we started the analysis. So first of all, they had to be within that NRSA boundary. We looked at their incomes and housing affordability and the other things you have listed here. We also looked at existing conditions and assets and opportunities. And this is a lot of data sets. I can't tell you how many numbers have been crunched to get to this point. So after all the number crunching, the review panel selected these 8 to apply. They were just basically scored based on all the data. And so there was just a wide array. You'll note kind of the geographic equity, and that was part of the goals for this, was to make sure we were looking at all sectors within the NRSA. We had 4 that applied, and I have to tell you that the 4 finalists were fabulous. This had to be a very difficult decision for the review panel to make to narrow it down to 2. The interview process and application process was very interesting and fun. They were enthusiastic. They were prepared, very prepared to answer the questions and to complete the applications. And so the things that the committee, the review panel, looked at the most were these 5 things here: the existing capacity, that was very important for the neighborhoods, their involvement, the collaboration with partnerships, need for S&I resources is a big one, and the compatibility with our mission. This is the final vote and the scores. So as you can see on the final score on the far column on the right, Capitol Hill had the most amount of points and the highest percentage. Capitol View was next, followed by South Crescent Hills, White Orchard, and Metro Park. So these are the recommended S&I neighborhoods starting in 2018, and Capitol View and Capitol Hill. And if I could look back, could the members of Capitol View stand up for me? And Capitol Hill, ladies? We're really looking forward to working with this group, but of course it is up to you to make that decision. And Jennifer, if you could mind just pushing the next slide, and we'll talk about a little bit about these neighborhoods. Just as a brief snapshot. The population of Capitol Hill is around 4,000. Their average household income is around a little bit less than 24,000. They have about $32 million of bonds investments coming to them pretty soon. That's a significant amount of investment. So we will be working with them as well as some other departmental staff to make sure that we coordinate all of our efforts. Capitol View has a population of about 1,500, so significantly smaller than Capitol Hill. The average household income is pretty similar at 20,000. And they have a much lower number of dollars going into that neighborhood with the bond funds, but we will work to maximize that as much as possible in terms of with other programs and projects. So what happens next? After your approval of the resolution, we will start working with them literally the first and 2 weeks of January to develop some list of projects and programs that they need, and we'll work with them on that. We will take that list and include that into our HUD's Consolidated Action Plan, which will be approved by you all or considered by you all in April and May. And then we will start implementation July 1. And we will also continue to work with Culbertson's East Highland at the same time. And this is all, of course, contingent upon HUD funds continuing to come to our city and state. Okay? Any questions?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm sure that Council has encouraging words to come too from city staff. Thank you for doing all of this. You know, these are not short-term projects, and extremely important to concentrate on these areas.
I would really like to congratulate both neighborhoods for really stepping up and doing what you need to do to improve your neighborhood, you know, personally, and taking that ownership. And thanks for staff for putting this whole thing together. I mean, it's a huge undertaking and definitely takes a lot of work, so thank you.
Todd, I'd really like to follow on to that and thank the 2 neighborhoods that weren't selected. A
Right.
ton of effort and energy went into those applications, and you know, I think they were winners as well. I certainly, you know, have seen evidence that they will continue to work together, and as we go through the next go-round, maybe there's another opportunity. So for those that weren't selected, don't give up. And,
Right. We really hope that they do reapply when this comes back up in 5 years.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your work.
Thanks, Shannon.
And I'd like to share the same comments as my colleagues, and special thanks again to city staff for continuing with the S&I. As you can tell by the reports, we've had 3 S&I neighborhoods in the past. 2 have been really successful. We're still struggling with 1 neighborhood, but we're going to make that neighborhood a success story. And I also like to give special thanks to the 2 neighborhoods that were selected. And I kind of take a little bit of credit for Capitol Hill, because on the other side of the street is Ward 7. So I think I'm going to share that with Councilman Stone. And then Capitol View neighborhood, it's great to see Capitol View Neighborhood Association, who, matter of fact, came out in strong numbers this morning. I just want to give a special thank you, and I look forward to continuing working with you all and making Capitol View one of the best neighborhoods in Oklahoma City. Matter of fact, the association has State Representative Jason Lowe and myself out on a cold Sunday afternoon listening to some of the concerns in the neighborhood. So hopefully we'll be able to get those issues resolved. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
All right. Todd, did you want to comment on this? And you asked to speak, and I was thinking it might have been the one we just went through.
The only other thing I was going to mention real quickly
sorry.
is item R.
Item R. Okay, well, go ahead.
The item R, I just wanted to mention, it's the approval of the final plans and specs for the new fire station that'll be located out on Southeast 164th and Douglas. Okay. And I'm really excited about that. I know a lot of people in that area are, and really just kind of wanted to bring it to the forefront and let everyone know that's working on that project. We appreciate it coming to fruition. Thank you.
Right. And Ed, you wanted to speak on AC?
Just to acknowledge, to thank Eric Winger for his work, David Bohannon, this is extending the quiet zone. Meg, that quiet zone goes down to South 29th?
Yeah.
So now it'll go up to Wilshire. This is extending it from downtown up to Wilshire. Stakeholders raised $250,000. We'll match that with unlisted 2007 GO bond funds. And I hopefully can keep growing through the city.
What is the next intersection after Wilshire?
Yeah, it'll be beyond Wilshire.
Britain,
Wilshire they won't blow. It'll be the next intersection, which will be south of, on western south of Britain, and then of course they'll blow at Britain too.
And Britain is a very complicated
Right.
intersection, but hopefully we can take that on in the upcoming years.
Yeah, I was really happy to see that.
Yeah.
It's great.
Same here.
And
All
Mayor,
right.
I had one more if I could.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention 7M, and this is actually in Ward 8, Mark, forgive me, but I just wanted to recognize, and Robbie Kinzel's here, I just wanted to shout out about the call for artists, request for qualifications is being advertised for the MAPS 3 Senior Wellness Center up at 115th and Rockwell, and this would be the public art for the exterior of the Health and Wellness Center. And Robbie, how does one respond to this?
And those that don't know, we are well over 3,500 members now, and it's a wonderful place, and I encourage everyone to go visit and see it.
This is our second public art project at Wellness Center number 1, and we're really excited about it because we think that it'll help the public want to use the exterior, and so hopefully this will be completed by later this late summer.
And how does interested artists respond to this?
They will
Your office?
register in BidSync.
In BidSync, great.
Yes, and at the same time, we also have item L, the pre-qualified pool 2. And so artists that register in BidSync will automatically submit images and their resume and their artist response for the work. And then a selection committee has already been formed, and we have our first selection committee already on calendars for this. So they have a mandatory site tour once we shortlist, so they can see the site and respond to the site itself and what happens there. And then we have our final selection after they present their conceptual design report. So it takes several months to go through the selection process, but it's very well detailed with the artist seeing the site and responding to it.
Right. Thanks, Robbie. We have a motion and a second on the consent docket. Ready to vote? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 8 is the concurrence docket. All right, are there any individual considerations? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9 are items that require a separate vote. We'll start with a series of zoning cases. The first is an ABC issue in Ward 6. The address is 3903 A South Western Avenue. Meg?
Yes, Mayor. This is a request to permit beer and wine sales at La Tropicana, restaurant. There were no protests. I would move approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 9A1. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9A2 is an ABC issue in Ward 5. The address is 824 Southwest 89th Street. David?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an application for an ABC-2 permit, and there have been no protests, so I would move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. We're voting on 9A2. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9A3 is an ABC issue in Ward 1. The address is 9200 North Council Road. James?
Did anybody sign up in protest? I move for approval.
All right, we're voting on item 9A3. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9A4 is a zoning case in Ward 2. The address is 808 Northwest 70th. It's currently R1 single family, and it would become a I2 moderate industrial district. Ed?
This passed Planning Commission unanimously. If nobody signed up to speak, I move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 9A4. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9A5 is a zoning case in Ward 3 at 8801 Southwest 59th Street. It's currently in a PUD, and it would be put into a new PUD if approved. Larry?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. There were no protests. Is the applicant present? I have some questions about where this goes next. So without the applicant here, I'd like to move for a deferral.
All right, the motion is for a deferral. We have a second. Is there anyone here who would like to comment on that deferral? All right.
January 2nd.
The new date for that item will be January 2nd. All right, cast your votes, and that item is deferred. Item 9A6 is a zoning case in Ward 2 at 2525 Northwest 112th Street. It's currently R1 single-family residential, and it would be put into a new PUD if approved. Ed?
This also passed the Planning Commission unanimously. If nobody signed up to speak, I move for approval.
All right, cast your votes on 9A6. It passes unanimously. Item 9A7 is a zoning case in Ward 5 at 7820 South Penn. It's currently inside of a plan unit development, and it would be put into a new SPUD if it's approved. David?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. This is an application to allow residential use into a existing hair salon business. There was no protests, and the Planning Commission recommended for approval, so I would recommend for approval.
All right, we're voting on item 9A7. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9A8 is a zoning case in Ward 1 at 8216 Northwest Expressway. It's currently C3 Community Commercial, and it would become a new SPUD if approved. James?
Yeah, this is currently an auto repair facility. This SPUD has a base of I1. It actually brings a non-conforming use into compliance. There were no protesters, and that Planning Commission approval, so I move for approval.
All right. Do we have a second? We're voting on item 9A8. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9A9 is a zoning case in Ward 6 at 3708 South Douglas Avenue. It's currently in a plan unit development, and it would be put into a new SPUD if approved. And Meg, we have one person who has signed up to speak.
Great. Why don't we hear from that person?
All right. Ted? Good morning, Ted, and we'll need your name and address for the record.
Ted Teskey, 3008 Hickory Stick Road in Oklahoma City. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. The subject is a 157-unit apartment complex. We're seeking to rezone it to a new SPUD. We're not aware of any protests at this time.
And this, the purpose of this, it says to remove the minimum tenant age restriction. Can you
That's right.
speak to that?
The current PUD 137 from 1982 imposes a 55-plus age restriction on tenants. What that means for us is that our upstairs units have on average, those tenants pay on average $100 less than our downstairs units because of the demographic restriction. There are no elevators on this complex. It's 10 two-story buildings because there are entrances on opposite sides of the building. In order to add elevators, we would have to add 2 elevators per building at a cost of $50,000 to $100,000 each. In order to rent to everybody and achieve the same rates upstairs as downstairs, we're seeking to change to a new SPUD.
I have never seen this before. Bob, have we done this kind of a thing before?
Yes, we've done it multiple times. It's been a while since we've had them, but we did 5 or 6 there. It was kind of a thing for a while.
I mean, I saw that there
Elderly-
were no protests, but it just, as I was reading the file, it just made me question whether or not people selected to live there because of the age restriction, and are you getting any complaints for your tenants about making this change?
We did not discuss it with our tenants in advance of the change, and we anticipate that this change, and allow us to rent to a broader population will allow us to change the rates too. However, we agree to transition our current tenants over 2 years to the new rates, so meeting them halfway on the next renewal. And of course, we're going to honor any leases in place now.
Well, there were no protests, nobody showed up at the Planning Commission, there were no, so I would move approval.
Second.
All right, we're voting on item 9A9. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, item 9B is a series of adjustments to the comprehensive plan. Item 9B1 is a Ward 5 issue along South May Avenue and has to do with some signs. David?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. David, are you prepared to discuss this? And we can go ahead and combine B1 and B2 if that's okay in the discussion.
Yeah, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Got a host of folks here from the development team, the architects, the civil engineer, to answer any questions. What we're seeking to do today is rezone this to a PUD that would allow a senior independent living facility. This site is currently zoned in an old PUD, and that old PUD allows straight C3 commercial. So there's a host of really intense commercial uses that could happen here. Knowing that this neighborhood is very involved and has been involved in various disputes or zoning issues, we did reach out and we were able to have meetings with them. One of the main concerns they had was what would they see along Earlywine Boulevard and what kind of access would we be taking. At the end, what we were able to do is come to an agreement by which we will take access to Earlywine as well as May Avenue, but Earlywine there at the first street stub you see, and then we will construct a wall. We got an agreement in place. Before Planning Commission, there was a protest letter that was submitted. After we reached an agreement with the neighborhood, they subsequently sent a letter in withdrawing that protest. So when we came to Planning Commission, we were there with no protest, and I believe Planning Commission looked at this as a significant downzoning from what's there now. So for the neighborhood's perspective, I think this is an overall net positive, which is why they withdrew their protest, and Planning Commission's recommendation was unanimous in their approval.
Thank you, David. And I have some firsthand input on this. I live in this neighborhood, so I'm going to recommend approval. But I do have one question. What's the occupancy at the facility? How many people will it be able to house?
Good morning. My name is H. McNeish. I'm with Confluent Development. We're at 2240 Blake Street, Suite 200, Denver, Colorado 80205. Confluent Development is the owner and developer of the project. The operator, in this case, we partner closely with a couple of operators across the country. And HRA is that group for this facility. This project will have 112 units and is expected to have about 125 beds. So it would be that number of residents.
Okay. And can you describe the units? Are they, is it multi-story? Can you just describe a little bit about the facility itself?
So the project is a combination of assisted living and memory care, two specific services for residents. Of those units, the memory care component is all on a first level, and it is on the eastern wing here. We've got 32 memory care units in that level. The assisted living is on the western wing, and it is a two-story structure with split in about 40 units on each level. So 80 assisted living units. In each of those areas of the building, there are courtyards serving as secure, comfortable, and generous space. We have about a 4,700 square foot courtyard in the east wing for the memory care residents, and about a 12,000 square foot courtyard for the assisted living residents.
Thank you. Yeah, that looks very nice. And as David indicated, it's currently zoned for a much higher intense use, and the residents' main concern was access along Early Wine Boulevard and the amount of traffic. And unfortunately, as it relates to these types of developments, people just don't come and visit people who have memory care issue and need assisted living due to their age. So while I understand the residents' concern about the increase in traffic, unfortunately what happens with these facilities, there's just not that much.
Not enough traffic generated, actually.
Yeah, you really, I wish we could change that, but that's just what happens. So us older people need to get prepared for that once we move in. Say goodbye to the family, and I'm kidding about that, but I would recommend approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 9B1.
Oh, yeah, B1. Yeah. I'm sorry, David, would you explain the distinction between B1 and B2?
Yeah, so B1 is just the amendment to the master design statement to include all of the items that were listed as technical evaluations, which we've agreed to, and then B2 would then be the ordinance.
Yes, okay.
All right, we're voting on item 9B1. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Motion on 9B2.
Yes, move for approval.
Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And in Ward 6, we have a similar request to change the comprehensive plan. This has to do with the spud on 1140 Northwest 13th Street. Bag?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a similar situation where we're being asked to amend the design statement and then approve the ordinance. This is a slightly unique situation in that we're looking at a zoning change on a project that's already been built. So the attempt here is to adopt some of these technical evaluations that will help correct some concerns that neighbors had with this project. Is the applicant here? David. Hello, David.
Hi, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. You're right, this is a bit odd in that as currently built, it was permitted properly. It's zoned R3, and so what the zoning case will allow us to do is to plat this and sell these as individual units. So when I got involved, it was kind of a mess, frankly. There was a lot of protest. I think this is an overall positive for the neighborhood in that you're going to be able to have two buildings full of owner-occupied units rather than rental units. We did make several modifications to the master design statement after meeting with the neighbors and the planning commission members and my client. Those are all now outlined into the document. There were very specific requests they had, most of which my client agreed to. So the PUD statement now has all of those spelled out as well as various exhibits to confirm those things that my client said they would do would now be approved by ordinance, therefore would be required and have some sort of enforcement mechanism through the city. So ultimately went to planning commission and got a positive recommendation.
Right, so this started, again, it started sort of backwards. It went to the Board of Adjustment first. And they got variances on several items, built the project, and then some of those things weren't really in conformance with the plan. So I just think for the record, it's important to say that some of the things where we've been able to reduce concerns and bring it into conformance with our Plan OKC policies are reducing the expanse of paving and the driveway widths, providing additional landscaping and green space, screening mechanical equipment, which was out on the street, and rebuilding the alley that was damaged during construction. And that was a big issue for some of the neighbors.
That's right. That's right. And we needed to do it anyways, because that's, our southern building only takes access from that alley, but that was a major point of concern.
Right, so we needed to do it. So, anyway, again, it is a little awkward, but there were no protests. It was unanimously approved at the Planning Commission. I think it was deferred twice, but we finally got there, and Commissioner Highsmith moved to approve it. So I would move approval of this.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 9C1. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
And then the ordinance.
I'd move approval of the ordinance as well.
Cast your votes. And 9C2. 9D is another amendment to the master design statement, and then we'll vote on an ordinance. Ed, this is on Northwest 27th Street. All right, we're voting on item 9D1. This is the amendment to the master design, and it passed unanimously. Need a motion on 9D2. Cast your votes, and it passed unanimously. Item 9E is a sidewalk issue that will be added to the master design in Ward 3. Larry?
Yes, David, this is yours.
Once again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This is a bit of a unique spud in that this is an existing building, been existing for quite some time. It's been vacant for several years. My client runs a drug and alcohol rehab facility. They're a national group. So when we came in and we filed this application, this was one of those uses that I believed would raise some flags and some concern, but I thought if they could hear my client, they would probably be okay with it. So we did have a neighborhood meeting. We had about 25 people in attendance, and ultimately when we went to Planning Commission, there was only one individual that had concerns. My client runs a private pay, non-government subsidized facility. They don't take court-ordered patients, and those two factors, the private pay and no court-ordered, ultimately were what led the neighborhood to be okay with this. Those two issues, it was requested of us to put that into the SPUD master design statement. We did that. If you'll recall, you have a function as a city council to have what's called a special permit. Those have what's called a program description. We don't have that here, but what we essentially did was we add a detailed description of the use inside the SPUD, so that if something were to happen and my client were to sell this, those two factors are now would be approved by ordinance and therefore have some enforcement mechanism through the city. So ultimately, we did have buy-in by the residential folks that live there. The individual that showed up in protest at Planning Commission operates and owns a pawn shop on the south side of 23rd Street. His concern seemed to be increase in traffic. My client explained the way that their operation is. You know, their folks that are there aren't allowed to leave and come and go, and so there's really not a big traffic generated by this use. And ultimately, the Planning Commission was unanimous in the recommendation for approval.
Has anyone signed up? Unless there's any questions from council, I move for approval.
All right, we're voting on item 9E1. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Larry, 9E2.
Same also.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, item 9F is a couple of issues that have to do with rights of way. The first would vacate an alley in Ward 7. John, you okay with this?
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anyone signed up to speak? No one signed up to speak. With that said, I move for approval.
Okay, we're voting on item 9F1. Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. And item 9F2 is in Ward 6. Meg?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a project that the developer and Public Works has been working on for a couple of years to help increase some parking in the Plaza District. And I think we all hear routinely that parking is a continuing issue and can be an impediment to some extent for people visiting the Plaza District. So there were no protests at the Planning Commission meeting, and no protests here. It passed unanimously, and I would move approval.
All right, we're voting on item 9F2. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. 9F3 is back in Ward 7. This would close a right-of-way, John.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Clerk, anyone signed up to speak? The Planning Commission did move for approval. Again, this is to close a right-of-way. With that said, I move for approval.
All right, we're voting on item 9F3. Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. And item 9G is in Ward 2. And Ed, we have someone who has signed up to speak. Debbie Eddy. Good morning, Debbie. Good morning. We'll need your name and address for the record. You might pull that microphone down a little bit, too. Thank you.
Now, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's
Thank
much
you.
better.
Deborah Eddy, 2501 Northwest 37th Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73112.
All right, and you're in support of closing the alleyway.
I am. I live next to the easement that's in question, and I would hope that you would agree that closing that easement is necessary. It would help decrease the number of vagrants that literally camp out in that easement. They shouldn't be there. They produce a lot of trash, which I seem to be the person that's appointed to pick that up. And we do have increasing theft in the area because of people that have no business in that area. They don't live in that area. We don't mind people that live in the area walking their dogs if there are neighbors. We don't mind new neighbors, but we would like for them to be living in the area, not camping out in the area. And as a child, I used to take that bridge to walk to Sequoia Elementary. I guarantee you the children that live in the Y take the bus. So it's really not of any value anymore.
All right. Ed?
What would we be doing exactly? How would we stop this?
I don't know that it would put a stop to it. It would help tone it down if we could put no trespassing signs to start with. We're just a small number that live along that easement, but we would like to put up some type of fencing or posting or something to let people know that if they don't belong in that neighborhood, they have no business being there.
So are we doing that, or are you doing that?
I think that that's probably going to fall on us. That was something I asked when they first came around with the petition, and it was like, well, if it happens, we'll kind of address that later. So I think it's probably going to be left up to us.
I've just never seen this before. Is this something we can do or that we have done, or?
My father, Bill Granger, back in the early or mid-'60s, along with Ivan Barrett, who was our neighbor behind us, helped stop the closing of Chicago from going through. I think at that time, my dad did not want all of the traffic that close to our house, but now it's becoming more of an issue. I live in the corner house there along 37th and 37th Place where the cul-de-sac is. And I have been the recipient of people trespassing on my property, getting in my backyard that is fenced, and I know other neighbors have had thefts. I've been lucky.
Ed, looks like we had someone else move into position hoping to speak next.
Okay.
So, Debbie, thank you.
Thank you.
And sir, if you'd come up and give us your name and address.
My name is Casey Friedman. I live at 2468 Northwest 38th Street, and I live next to the alleyway in question. And my wife and I are the ones that filed the petition. And to address what we would hope to do if the alleyway was closed is we just plan to build wooden fences. There's an alleyway identical, there's a bridge identical down the street from us that's been closed in the last year, and they just have a wooden fence in front of the
Okay, so
bridge.
you're also for closing the right-of-way?
Absolutely.
You're on the same side as
Yes,
Debbie?
absolutely.
Okay. All right, well, thanks for coming down.
And I've got 7 neighbors who are very eager to close it off. And from what I understand, one neighbor already did close it off years ago, but they were ordered to reopen it. But it's a space that just, it's an unloved piece of land that's just, you can't really do much with it because people that walk through there are just going to trash it. And everybody plays a game where whatever's in the alleyway, they pick up and they throw it in the ditch. And so we just kind of want to end that.
Yeah. Can I hear from city staff? Yeah.
We had 2 or 3 of these a few years ago in South Oklahoma City where they were originally designed for neighborhood kids to walk to school, and the council closed those as well. I think they need to talk with Public Works about what they do with the bridge. But part of the concern is with that bridge, if somebody's in there and they want to get out, they can get out across that bridge. And removing that might be an option. But this we don't do it a lot, but we have done it before.
Okay.
Closing easements.
And what can they not do to the bridge? Is it?
Well, that's something we'd have to talk with Public Works about what their options are with the
Okay.
bridge.
All right. Move for approval if there's no other questions.
All right, we're voting on item 9G1. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And 9G2, is there a motion? Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. All right, 9H is a public hearing regarding some discharge issues with our sewers.
This is
Browning's
yeah.
over here.
Well, Chris Browning presented it 2 weeks ago, and this is the public hearing portion of it. This is required by EPA that we review our industrial
All right.
pretreatment every 5 years.
All right, well, did anyone show up today hoping to speak on item 9H? All right, well, why don't we just move it forward then? Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. All right, item 9I is an item being introduced today by Park Director Doug Cupper.
And this has really been holding the city back for years about the secretary designation for the Parks Commission. So if Doug could come up. Doug here? Okay, I guess I will explain it. We've previously, historically, designated the Parks Secretary to be a member of the Parks Board, but they really don't do any secretarial duties, and so we want to clean this up and have staff be designated actually as the secretary, since they do provide those duties, as opposed to what has historically been done with a member being designated secretary.
That's correct, sir.
All right, item just being introduced today, assuming it's set for a public hearing, that would be on January 16th, and final adoption would be scheduled for January 30th. But just being introduced today, does council wish to put it through? We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions here on this item? All right, cast your votes. It passed unanimously. And again, the public hearing would be January 16th. Item 9J is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9J? All right, how about a motion to move these forward? Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. We don't need to vote on 9J2? All right. Item 9K is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9K? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. Item 9L is a public hearing regarding abandoned buildings. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9L? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9M is a public hearing regarding the removal of properties from the abandoned buildings list. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9M? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9N is our annual adjustment on the health insurance for our firefighters.
Retirees.
The retirees of the firefighters. Is there a motion here? All right, cast your votes on 9N. It passes unanimously. Item 9O has to do with the revision of our police policy. And Chief City is around if we need him for anyone here, or we can have a motion. All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9P is a resolution that affects all 8 wards, and Eric's here to do a presentation to explain.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to just do an update, and then I can answer some questions. But what you have before you on item today is what we've previously been known as Traffic Calming Program, but it's been renamed the Alternative Speed Abatement Program. This actually began several years ago in late 2013. A lot of discussions had been held at the Traffic Commission level with lots of different neighborhoods and HOAs coming and asking for things like stop signs and ways to really curb speeding traffic through neighborhoods. And there weren't real good solutions proposed at that time. And so a subcommittee was formed. Commissioners Littlefield and Commissioner Schuline really led that charge over about a 2-year period to study alternatives, things that the Traffic Commission could consider. things that could be presented to neighborhoods as a way to possibly slow down some vehicles that they thought were traveling too fast. And so as a part of our city code, the Traffic Commission can exercise its option to present to this council a program which is in your agenda today, the Alternative Speed Abatement Program. It was recommended at their last meeting. It does address and begins the process to do neighborhood streets, collector streets, and also industrial streets. It does exclude arterials, and so some of those tools that had been discussed could be things like speed humps, speed cushions, driver feedback devices, possibly the use of mini roundabouts. What's included in the program for your consideration today is to start with the driver feedback devices. And so that we're really clear what those are, these are the radar-controlled speed limit registers that we can put on signs that allow motorists to know how fast they're actually traveling. The council has also previously given direction to look at some pilot projects for speed humps, and so I suspect that we'll also be adding those to the program as well. So to allow us to move forward, consideration is given for you today to adopt this, to allow staff to administer the program and move it forward. We would probably put an online application together similar to what we've done with the neighborhood sign toppers or with the sidewalk replacement program that will allow ease of access for those that are interested to make application. There are some criteria that do have to be met. This isn't just something that we're willing to go out and just do up front. I mean, there are going to have to be some speed limit requirements and other things checked to ensure that the street can receive the treatment. And then it's something that also is going to be funded by the individual applicants. And so at this point, there's no cost to the city. We would manage it where staff would oversee. Staff would also assist possibly in the installation and the long-term maintenance. But again, there would be a cost associated with this that would be presented back to the applicant for consideration. So this really is that first step for us to look at traffic calming and speed abatement, something that the Commission is recommending for your consideration today, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Having gone through this process about 10 to 15 years ago with the neighborhood, I just want to thank the staff and I want to thank the committee. This is a great step forward, and it will really help a lot of neighborhoods. So we appreciate your work.
Yeah, and I really would like to thank my commissioner, J.B. Schuline, and Rob Littlefield for taking this on. I know it's been years of meetings and talking to neighborhoods. Lots of people are requesting different types of things, and I think to begin to offer a little menu of choices and have the neighborhoods participate is really a great approach. So thanks, Eric.
Thank you. I would say there's a lot of collaboration also with the Planning Commission. There were some presentations made to the Planning Commission, and there was even a joint meeting, probably a year and a half ago between the Traffic Commission and the Planning Commission. So we'll probably be presenting additional information to the Planning Commission because they too also find the design of neighborhoods important for also speed abatement.
I would just echo Meg's, to Rob Littlefield, also Planning Commissioner Janice Powers. They've worked for years and years and years on this. And, there was some controversy about the Heritage Hills, but they only had one option, which is stop signs. And so now we're giving neighborhoods more than one option, and they've been crying out for this for a long, long time. So this is, just to be clear, that there's certain parameters you have to, this is like a two-lane street. It can't be a two-lane street with a center lane. It has to connect, it has to be in a residential area, it has to connect to a school, or it doesn't have to, but it can connect to a school or institution. There are certain streets that qualify and some that don't. And then you would apply, a neighborhood would apply, and then they would come up with the funds after a petition process.
That's generally yes. The answer is yes to those. So there are some criteria that need to be met, and they're summarized in the memo if you don't want to look at the entire program, but it is limited to basically residential collector or industrial. So again, it excludes the arterial streets without review. But some of the standards are that it has at least 500 vehicles a day on a street, that it has a posted speed limit of 30 or less, and then there's some other detailed criteria that they'll look at from an engineering perspective just to make sure that when applied, we're actually putting a device in that's meaningful. So.
Thank you.
All right, item is up for a resolution today. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
All right, we're voting on item 9P. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 9Q is a resolution about the Water Utility Trust, and it has to do with some construction projects that will be coming up. Chris is here to explain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning. Each year, we put together a list of projects and submit them to the Oklahoma Water Resources Board for funding consideration through the State Revolving Fund Program. The last meeting, I presented a similar item, a similar resolution for our surface water and our wastewater projects. This particular resolution would enable the Water Utilities Trust to accept up to $76 million for drinking water-related projects. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item.
Doesn't look like there are any. Is there a motion? All right, cast your votes on 9Q. It passed unanimously. Thanks, good luck.
Your Honor, before Chris leaves, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Did we mention at any of our council meetings about the Water Utilities Trust winning the Drinking Water Award, or was it just at the Water Utility Trust meeting?
No, there was actually a presentation.
I'm sorry.
The Mayor Cornett acknowledged them there were 3 different awards that they won in a short period of time, and there was an item that they were recognized for all 3 items.
Hopefully I missed that meeting, or it's another indication I'm getting a little bit older.
I'm sure you were out on work.
Thank you. It's worth mentioning any time we can about the award.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. All right, item 9R, understand we do not need executive session, so a motion to approve would be in order. Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. Item 9S, we do not need executive session. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9T, understand we do not need executive session. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Under 9U, I understand we do need executive session. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9V is claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9V? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 10 is claims recommended for approval. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under item 10? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And items from council. Mark?
Other than to wish everybody a merry and happy holiday, hope you enjoy your family and get to spend time together with them.
Same here.
All right. Meg?
I would say the same. Happy holidays to everyone.
Your Honor, I know we're going to have a presentation about, with respect to solid waste, but prior to that, I was just going to bring up an item that was brought to my attention at one of the neighborhood meeting associations that I attended. This resident often goes out of town over the weekend, and this time they left like at noon on Thursday, so they moved their trash, the big blues, out to the curb on Thursday at noon, and they had, when they returned, and their neighbor across the street always, when they do that, pulls them back up to the house after the trash is collected, but they got a notice if they did that again, they would be fined, because the time frames, you can't put if your trash is collected on Friday, you can't put your trash bins or the big blues out prior to, I believe it's 7 p.m. the night before. And if you do, you're subject to a fine. My point is, because I know there's people who say, yeah, we need to enforce that all the time, as well as there's a time frame when you have to collect those trash collecting facilities and pull them back up to your house. I'm suggesting we just try to remind everybody of those rules as much as we can, and maybe even work with Georgie through the various neighborhood associations to remind everybody we've got those rules in place for a reason, and we're going to enforce them.
We can certainly do more to get some information on that. Yeah. My guess that if we gave them a warning, that one of their neighbors probably turned them in.
I see.
It's doubtful that we probably went out and proactively did that. Could have, but
yeah.
I would think generally not. Generally, I'm guessing the neighbor probably, neighbor.
And since most neighbors make arrangements to where if they know their neighbor's out of town, they'll pull them back up, just go ahead and do it on the front end as well to ensure that you're not violating any of our many municipal ordinances. So, thank you. Oh, one other thing. So we moved our offices further east from where they used to be, and I often try to take walks during lunch. And so this time I was going to walk down Robinson to our new park and go to Union Station, but there's work going all over, so you can't walk through the park area. So I ended up walking over I-40 bridge and down on Southwest 10th, and then coming back on Walker. My point is, I just hope the city's photographer is taking a lot of photographs of both the park areas that's going through development, as well as the area south of I-40 where the future southern portion of the Quarter Shore Park is, along Robinson. Is that in your ward, Meg?
One side of the street.
And then the others. Okay, so John and Meg, I hope there's a lot of photographs taken of Robinson Avenue along Old Hubcap Alley, because it is going to change so much, in the next 10 to 15 years. And somebody will stumble through these photographs that are taken now and say, my goodness, look how much this area has changed, because you can tell things are really going to happen and for the better. And I plan to continue to walk down there, and anyone who wants to join me, just let me know, because it's a great way to get some exercise, Mayor, so we can keep, that momentum going about losing weight, and also just see what's going on in the southern part of that park within a few years. So,
Good reminder, David.
thank you.
Todd?
I just wanted to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
All right. Thanks. Larry?
I'd like to also wish people a Merry Christmas, and also like to commend the Windsor Area Business Group. A week ago, Saturday, they had an activity up at the Windsor Hills Shopping Center as part of the efforts to revitalize that center. It was called Christmas in the W. They had booths set up to show you what other how they celebrated Christmas. There was a free movie given, there was free food, and it was just a great event to kick off the holiday season. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ed?
It was less than 3 months ago that this council approved a TIF authorizing $60 million, $60 million to be reimbursed to the Humphreys family for the Wheeler District. Obviously, Kirk Humphreys is the majority financial entity. So, in essence, we authorized $60 million to fund a former city mayor. On top of that, another $60 million, 60, for 2 schools. I think there's a expectation that enormous amount of public investment, which would exceed the streetcar, for example, would include inclusivity and city standards. And so the comments by Mayor Humphreys, former Mayor Humphreys, 9 days ago feels like a betrayal. It's very, very hurtful, and it's very dangerous. We don't equate things like heterosexuality, which is a sexual orientation, with pedophilia, which is being debated in the scientific literature, whether that's a sexual orientation or not. But they're not equated when we see somebody engage in that who is heterosexual. Homosexuality, which is a sexual orientation, is completely different. And to equate those is dangerous on his part. But I am encouraged by the paradigm shift, by watching society evolve. I mean, I think he's still engaged in things that he very much believes in, that he practiced here as mayor, that it caused the city to get sued by the Cimarron Alliance for trying to ban the banners for the Pride Parade and things like that. And we've evolved, and now I think you see this pushback that people aren't going to tolerate that kind of scapegoating. And I think that's positive for the city of Oklahoma City. I think that, to hear him cite scripture as his justification for this kind of bigotry and this kind of hate language, I think if you are a Christian, I think it should be concerning for a couple of reasons. Number one, Christianity is facing some trouble in the years and decades ahead. The gentleman that came from the Pew Foundation, they watched Christianity over the years. There is an enormous surge of people who are leaving all religions, not just Christianity, from 16% to 23% in just 7 years' time. That's millions and millions of people leaving all religions. They may believe in God, they may be spiritual, but they're leaving the religions. And the numbers for millennials is much, much higher. So as the elderly die off and are replaced by millennials, that number will surge higher. Millennials, not to mention my kids' generation, teenagers, when they hear Kirk Humphreys say this kind of bigotry, I mean, you might as well be speaking Chinese. They don't understand. Their friends, they understand that this choice argument that you are what you are. I mean, heterosexuals don't choose their sexual orientation, neither do homosexuals. And their friends, they all understand that. So when they hear Kirk Humphreys say this, you get that Christianity is fake news. You get this backlash against Christianity in these younger populations, and it will be devastating for the religion in the years and decades to come. The second thing is that when you see people, he really was struggling. I mean, he was using very tangential thought to get those thoughts into the conversation, which really didn't have anything to do with the topic at hand, which was sexual harassment. And many times people that are engaged in that kind of proselytizing and who cite scripture on one thing where Jesus didn't mention homosexuality, but he certainly mentioned adultery, right? But they never talk about adultery. They just scapegoat the homosexual LGBT community. So if someone like that were to, then it was to be figured out that they were engaged in activity that was against Scripture, right? Which so many of these people who proselytize like this are engaged. And they say things like that publicly to try and quell their anxiety about their own behavior. Right, so if they were to do that and then be caught, then it would cause a further backlash against the religion. But I think that, I understand that maybe he's being forced to read a statement today in front of OG&E because they're looking at removing him. I think that him being on boards and trusts, I agree with Paula Lewis of the school board that he should be off of John Rex and that he should be removed from these boards and trusts. Kenny's pointed out that you have to have standards of incompetence, neglect of duty, or malfeasance to be removed. I think you could make an argument. I wouldn't want to go to court over that. But I think the larger issue that those who want to curb this kind of behavior should consider is the financial one, is the public investment in the Wheeler District. You know, we had a convention center hotel. We had a gentleman who came and spoke to us who engaged in some of this activity. He gave a lot of money to hate groups and anti-LGBT efforts. He bought Gold's Gym. There was a backlash from the LGBT community about both Omni Hotels and Gold's Gym. And he, to his credit, changed his behavior. That corporation became much, much more inclusive. They reached out to the LGBT community. It might have been fear of financial consequences, but it doesn't matter. They changed their behavior. And I would just ask, those worried about this situation to consider holding off on investing in the Wheeler District, buying in the Wheeler District. We're making a sizable public investment around the new Court Shore Park as well. And you could make an argument that this is in competition with that. Maybe wait and see what we do with the park. Maybe you want to live around the park as opposed to the Wheeler District. A really nice thing that we did with this TIF is we don't put any public funds in up front, unlike some of our other ones. So if Humphreys doesn't turn this around with a real apology and real showing how this is going to be an inclusive community and that $60 million into these schools are going to be inclusive and everyone's going to be protected, then don't invest there. Boycott the Wheeler District. Don't let it die. And go to the Court Shore Park, and then there won't be this public investment. So I would just say, hold off for the time being, see what Kirk Humphreys does. We'll hear what he is being forced to read outside OG&E today, and see what their actions are in the next days and weeks. But for the time being, I would boycott the Wheeler District because I think that's the leverage that will get them to change their behavior. Thanks.
All right, James. All right. And I've got to leave for a 10 o'clock phone call. Ed, if you'll take over the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Chris Browning is here to give us an update on our solid waste rerouting and our recycling program.
Thank you. Did you lose the slides? Okay, thank you, and good morning again. Back in 2002, the city adopted a trash collection program where the city picks up about 40% of the trash, and we have a contractor to pick up the other 60. The current contract with Waste Management was awarded in 2016. To improve operational efficiencies, the trash routes need to be evaluated periodically. The city's collection area has been what we call rerouted 2 times since 2002, but the contractor's area has not. In 2016, council approved a project to improve the collection efficiency throughout the city. And so the project was awarded and is complete today and ready to implement. This is a side-by-side depiction of the current collection routes versus the new collection routes. The areas inside the red lines are city collection areas, and the areas outside are the contractor areas. As you can see, the old route through the growth of the city has become somewhat fragmented and is very difficult to pick up efficiently. The colors indicate the trash collection days. So what we try to do is consolidate to where we pick up a more consolidated route each day rather than jumping all over the city. So with the consolidation of these routes, as the city grows, we will have more efficiency with our collection, and that way we can keep the cost for collecting lower for our citizens. We've been training the drivers and testing our routes and testing our data for the last month or so. The target date for the new collection routes is February 5th. About 90,000 households will be impacted with the new reroute, which is about 45% of the area that we collect. Some residents will have only their trash days changed, and others will have both their trash and their bulky days changed. So to communicate the message, we've developed a comprehensive plan that will include 2 postcards. So we're going to mail these postcards to everyone first here in the next couple of weeks to tell them that there's a new trash day coming. And then next we'll send them a postcard specifically stating what their new trash, their new recycle, their new bulky day will be. So out of the entire 195,000, 90,000 will get a new day, and we'll tell them specifically with that second card what that new day will be. We're also going to use social media, Facebook, Nextdoor, and Twitter. We'll put notifications in the water bill, and we'll also put the changes on okc.gov to make sure that we get the message out as effectively as we possibly can. We will begin this month with that campaign, and the direct mail the first one will go out in early January. So now I want to give you an update on our recycle program. Along with the approval to do the rerouting evaluation, Council authorized an upgrade in our recycle program where we're going from the small 18-gallon recycle bins to the large bins that are similar in size to the Big Blues. We anticipated beginning the new program in March of 18. However, we were kind of set back with Hurricane Harvey. The resin to build the carts comes from South Texas Gulf Coast area. And when Harvey flooded that area, the resin producers had to stop the production. And so we have a new implementation schedule. The carts will be delivered beginning February, the end of February in 18. So that's going to push our program back to beginning the actual collection of the new recycle in July of 18. So I just wanted to bring everybody up to date on that program. We were originally going to start it in March, but it's been pushed back until July. So at this time, I'll be happy to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Vice Mayor, also in your packet this morning, we have the sales and use tax report for December, and it's good. We've had several good months in a row. That's encouraging. I don't want you to lose track, though, that we started from a pretty big hole, and so it's going to take us more than just these 6 or 7 months to get out of that hole. So as we sit here today, through half a year, we're about 2.6% over our projections, which is good, which is about $2.7 million in the general fund. And use tax is up about 2.2% over projections too. Now it's up 23% over last year, but we projected that there would be collections of use tax for the Amazon online, and so that's reflected in the use tax. And so, and again, we're at that even we're collections are exceeding our estimates on that. So that's very positive. But we still have a long ways to go. But I'd rather have this than maybe some other numbers that are out there.
So we're ahead of 12 months ago. Where would we be, excuse me, compared to 2 and 3 years ago?
We're probably about even. Yeah.
So no growth compared to 2 to 3 years ago, an improvement from last year.
A lot of improvement since last year.
A lot of improvement since last year.
Yes, sir.
Any other thoughts, questions? Okay. Citizens to be heard. So we have, looks like 4, Lennox, Ryerson, Gonzalez.
Hello, everybody. I am here, and sorry, I'm going to read off because I just wanted to make sure that I stay on point here, given that it's just 3 minutes. So thank you for your comments that you made earlier. We really appreciate that.
Sure. Lennox, can you give your name and address for the record before we
Yeah,
start?
my name is Lennox Ryerson Gonzalez. It's 2905 Northwest 70th Street.
Thank you.
My husband Andrew and I are here at the invitation of Councilman Ed Shadid to present our case regarding a violation of Chapter 30, Miscellaneous Provisions and Offenses of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code. 3 years ago, we left the casino industry to pursue our dream of being business owners. We took a leap of faith and invested our entire 401k and life savings into purchasing a building in downtown Norman and bought into an Adam and Eve franchise. With the positive support of the local community along with the city of Norman, we have been blessed with a bit of success with our business venture. This year, with hopes of expanding, we viewed a property located at 2905 Northwest 70th Street, and we're excited because of it being in one of the busiest commercial corridors in the city. Just like when we purchased a property in Norman, we did our best to do our due diligence and check on the zoning and also similar businesses like ours in the OKC area. With the seller and seller's broker knowing who we are as Adam and Eve, and with our broker ensuring the property was zoned for our intended use of general retail, we felt comfortable in our decision. In fact, we also noticed that a Christie's Toy Box down the street, located at 3126 North May Avenue, has been a good neighbor to OKC for many years and are next door neighbors to a high school, a playground, a church, and a massive neighborhood. On November 3rd, we purchased the building and expanded our business to the Oklahoma City area. We opened our doors to the public on Friday, November 17th. On November 20th, just 3 days after we opened for business, we received a notice of code violation that was delivered by Code Enforcement Officer Christopher Moses. I spoke to Mr. Moses over the phone, and he informed me that our business could not be there because it wasn't zoned for, quote, adult entertainment, quote, use. The The building is a SPUD 644, which is zoned for general retail, and I mentioned to Mr. Moses that we consider general retail because of the amount of soft goods we carry. He called me back later that day, and during our conversation, he mentioned to disregard the notice he left at the store, saying that we were correct and that we are not considered adult entertainment, but requested we meet him another person named JJ and one of the city attorneys on Monday, November 27th, to, quote, see where the line is. On Monday, the 27th, Christopher greeted us in the waiting room and escorted us into a meeting room with 10 to 12 people sitting around a table and only 2 vacant seats for Andrew and myself. We greeted the room and no one introduced themselves. We both felt ambushed and we were expecting to only meet with 3 people, and nobody explained why all these extra people were present. A piece of paper was slid in our direction and we were told that this was a new citation and that we were in violation of a miscellaneous ordinance in Chapter 30, indicating that we were within 1,000 feet of a residence. This was the first time we were made aware of this ordinance. Our due diligence efforts had only extended to a complete review of zoning ordinances, and we could not have reasonably been expected to comb through a large chapter on miscellaneous criminal codes, as we're simple business owners and not criminals. During the meeting, the attorney was pleasant. The only way that we knew it was an attorney is because she had her badge on and it was on the table and it said so. But we couldn't determine who anyone else was other than Mr. Moses. Most people in the room were completely silent. There was at least one gentleman who questioned us aggressively. At the end of the meeting, when everyone was getting up from their seats, I noticed one of the persons sitting back at the room move a folder that had been concealing a phone the whole time, and we both heard the sound that an iPhone makes when you press stop on a voice recording. Also, in this meeting, we had begged the city to meet us halfway and to do a walkthrough whereby we could learn exactly what products might be in violation, but the city declined to offer any assistance. Andrew even asked if we only sold lingerie, would that be within compliance? He was answered by a man who said that if wearing any lingerie caused excitement to the genitals, we would not be in compliance. This left us speechless. It is our opinion that considering how arbitrarily broad the Chapter 30 definitions are, nobody would be able to reasonably make this determination. So instead of being able to work directly with the city and try to come into compliance, we were only able to negotiate that we would guess and remove possibly violating products. On Friday, December 15th, we had intended to celebrate our official soft opening, and instead of making arrangements for our celebration, we spent time removing items from the walls that we made guesses on that code inspectors might find in violation. 3 inspectors arrived and began taking pictures of our product offerings, but pleasant as they were, gave no guidance as to whether or not we were in violation. As of this moment, we don't know what is happening. In consideration of the Christie's Toy Box store mentioned earlier and dozens of other businesses that are situated exactly like ours within the OKC city limits, we simply request to be given the same consideration and not to be singled out by miscellaneous codes that are arbitrary and capricious and stated so broadly that no ordinary person could determine what items may or may not be in violation. To think that a single person could level a complaint through the Action Center, whether or not they even are a neighbor, which could cause an action to shutter a new lawfully operating and locally owned business, is egregious. Our livelihoods and those of our employees and their families are being directly threatened. What chaos would ensue if a single complaint was leveled against any other operator in city limits that has such items in their shelves, like Walmart, CVS, Spencer's Gifts, Brookstones, or others? What would happen? We respectfully ask to be given the same consideration as our many competitors and fellow business owners throughout the city. Thank you.
So Andrew Ryerson Gonzalez, do you want to just stick with those statements or make an additional?
I want to add one thought. And
Can you give your name and address?
Yes, excuse me. Andrew Ryerson Gonzalez, also 2905 Northwest 70th Street. First, I wanted to thank the council for allowing us to speak today. And I'm terrified of public speaking, so I wasn't anticipating on saying anything to anyone today. But after hearing your comments about the former mayor's comments, I wanted to thank you for that. As a citizen, as a person who, living in Oklahoma, came from very humble beginnings in a single-wide trailer, as a taxpayer, as a married parent, as an employer that has employees in 2 cities, and now as an investor in 2 cities, I want to thank you for calling those comments out, because they're really terrifyingly inappropriate. And it's hard for citizens like myself and my husband to come before a governing body for any reason when, if we're in that definition of such an important former political figure, we wonder, how are we going to be received anytime we might want to ask for some help from the city. So this gives us some hope to hear those comments in this time, and I want to thank you. I do stand by everything that my husband said. We did bring multiple examples. I think we stopped at 10 or 12 of exactly similar businesses to us that are in city limits. There's, I'm sure, many more. We just didn't want to use all the toner because it's expensive. So we've got a whole bunch of examples if the council would be so inclined to see this. And we're just asking for the same, we're just asking to be treated the same. And I can't underscore enough what Lennox said. When we did our due diligence, and our real estate broker is here, we worked with her for our building in Norman, and we did everything we needed to do for Norman, and we felt that we had done the same, everything we needed to do with the city here in terms of reviewing the zoning. So this was a complete shock to us. It is absolutely terrifying. We don't know what to say to our employees and their families yet. Hopefully we don't have to say anything negative. And when we saw this miscellaneous criminal ordinance that was written in 1997, I asked that meeting, I said, well, what does this mean? Can you tell me what the penalty is? Like, what we're criminals? What is this? I don't understand. And nobody in the room could tell us what the penalty was. Although we have 2 buildings, we don't have the kind of funds to, hire a high-priced attorney, but we do have some friends that have some knowledge in this area, and they looked at the code and said, yeah, this thing exists, but it's like it's treating zoning things, but it's not even in the zoning chapter. They couldn't figure it out. They'd never seen or heard of it being applied. And I said, well, what's the penalty? What are we facing with the city of Oklahoma for noncompliance? I mean, we don't want to be in a big fight here. Let's just be in compliance. And they said, we don't know. We don't know if this is a civil, like a parking ticket. We don't know if this would be a felony or a misdemeanor. I'm floored that an attorney that's practicing, one that was in here today, couldn't even answer that, because it's so vague. So I guess I'm also perhaps asking if the assembled council and the mayor would possibly take a look at this miscellaneous ordinance and maybe take a look at what is actually happening now, decades later, in Oklahoma City, and see if this thing is still relevant. Because we couldn't even find it until apparently one unknown person complained because we opened up a business. And I also invite each of you to come into our store in Oklahoma City or in Norman. Take a look at what we're doing. Take a look at the community outreach we've done in Norman. We started Urban Alley, community initiative project to beautify the alleys there. Ask the city council there what kind of good neighbors we are. And don't take our word for it. Talk to our employees. We invite you to do that. Any single one of them, present or past employees. And they'll let you know we're here to be good people. We're here to be employers. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for coming and investing in Oklahoma City. You said that there's 10 Christie's Toy Box stores in the city limits?
Yes, I think that's an approximate number. We have a number of them right here, including the one that's closest to us.
If you want to pass those around, you can do that. But I asked them to come and for two reasons. One is that it's not specific to this case, but for 7 years I've heard city attorneys, city staff say that we have ordinances and we enforce them based on complaints. So if a neighbor complains, we enforce it. If there are no complaints, then we don't enforce it. And to me, is that written down somewhere? That cannot be the city standard of justice and fairness, is that we have a law. If neighbors or somebody complains, we execute the law, and if nobody complains, you don't have to be in compliance with the law. You have on May Avenue, you've got, as they said, Christie's Toy Box, which is right next to all these things in violation of this ordinance, clearly, but nobody's complained, so they're allowed to operate for years. Then they come in, they do the exact same thing. On a street, by the way, let's just be frank, there's probably 6 massage parlors on this, within a half a mile of this, next to all kinds of things that children go to. They're open till 10 o'clock at night. Listen, I'm a physician. I try and get patients to go get massages all the time. They won't do it. So there is something up that allows these places to flourish in our market until 10 o'clock at night, just one after the other, after the other, after the other. But that's, what I'm saying is that this standard cannot be that we only execute the law for those in cases in which there are complaints. That just seems inherently biased. I can't believe that's written down anywhere. If it is, that...
It isn't written down anywhere, but we have limited resources, and we have, in the police department, we have folks that do things. We have vice people in the police department, but that doesn't mean that there's maybe some illegal activity that goes on in some places that we're not able to catch. People speed down Broadway. We have people working Broadway to stop people from speeding, but people still speed as we go down Broadway. People put out their trash early.
Right.
Most times that isn't addressed. But the fact of the matter is, when we are made aware of the situation, we do enforce the code. We don't proactively have the resources to go out and do anything, whether it's solid waste enforcement, whether it's zoning enforcement, whether it's police enforcement.
Here's one thing I want you to consider that it opens us up to, because I just heard this a few days ago. There's a development on the southwest corner of Northwest Expressway and Penn. The developer is doing something that, I don't know all the details, doing something that is going to be a problem with one of our ordinances, is offering to pay cash to the people within 300 feet of the development. If you'll sign off on this, we'll give you $200 or whatever. I wasn't at the meeting, I'm not a witness to this, but I have people that were at the meeting telling me, can a developer pay us to sign, to not protest? That's potentially what you open yourself up to, is that you start incentivizing people within 300 feet not to protest. I'm just asking that some consideration be given to, if that's our standard, what that opens us up to. The second thing is this Article 30, which is a bit Orwellian, Kirk Humphreys-esque, Kirk Humphreys era-esque, and defines an adult novelty shop means a commercial establishment that displays, sells, or offers for sale instruments, devices, or paraphernalia designed or marketed primarily for use to stimulate human genital organs and/or for use in connection with sadomasochistic practices. That's our definition of an adult novelty shop. That to me seems outdated. Is that the language that we're seriously going to use with people who are trying to operate businesses and generate sales tax, and that's our standard? I just think that after however many years, maybe taking a look at this language and maybe revising it to bring it up into 2017 is warranted. And we have, in the past, we've let code violations slide for 6, 12, 18, 24 months while we study, things that do have some inherent limitations. And I just ask that some consideration be given to that, to us studying this language. I'm confused about whether it's a violation of adult novelty shop or whether it's a violation of adult entertainment. Has the city conceded on, it's not adult entertainment?
No, it's adult novelty shop. That's different than the adult entertainment.
I'm not going to read the adult entertainment paragraph, but it's just equally as Orwellian and outdated. And I'd ask the city to maybe look at that paragraph also. I mean, there's stuff that maybe was going on in the 1970s, but isn't in 2017. And it just needs to be updated and not quite so. So the morality police here. I mean, and using these kind of this verbiage to enforce it.
There's one thing to talk about the language in here, but there's an underlying principle that was a policy of this council years ago, and that's not to put adult novelty stores next to residential areas. And if we want to change that, that's the council's clearly a policy right to do that. So we can talk about the specifics of the outdated language, which may be outdated, but we've got to decide from a fundamental standpoint, do we want the overarching principle to change? And that's a policy issue of council.
Right. It's not just residential areas. It's parks, churches, public and private school, public library, church, synagogue, mosque, temple. It's basically the whole city. It's Orwellian, and it is basically the entire city, and there are, I just think the city council hasn't looked at it in 20 years.
Oh,
And
probably
I don't know
longer.
how much they looked at it before
Probably
that.
longer than that.
Yeah, so.
But there's still an overarching question that needs to be answered on the policy of where do you want to take this, and I don't know the answer to that at this point.
Okay.
If I may, and I apologize for interrupting, but in terms of where would the city of Oklahoma perhaps want to go as a council, if you go into your local CVS, and CVSs are strategically placed in neighborhoods, off the shelf where children can walk through the store, you can find vibrators. It's just a standard. That's the way things are now. Please don't take my word for it, just go look for yourselves. Each time a 50 Shades of Grey movie comes out in the theaters, I think there's another one coming out soon, Walmart puts 50 Shades of Grey end caps in the Walmarts. So I think that, personally, I think times have changed. I think that the discussion on positive sex and sexuality between consenting adults and increasing, intimate behavior in couples, which strengthens families, is kind of the new normal. I don't feel that Oklahoma City is facing a plague of the old, as you were saying, 70s truck stop sort of, things that are really dubious. These stores, ours, for example, we do a lot of client education. We have worked with the University of Oklahoma to bring in professors and groups of students, 50 at a time, to talk about human sexuality, answer their questions, and it's a part of the requirement for a course that these students take. We personally work with the communities. I can't speak to what Christie's does or whatever video on the corner or CVS, but I can tell you that in terms of what we do, we work with adults. And whereas children walking into a Spencer's or Brookstone or CVS or Walmart are not going to be shielded by products that are readily available on shelves, we don't allow children in our stores because it's a store for adults. But we also have a store where there's not a traffic area for children, if that is a concern. We recognize it. We're here for adults.
The purpose of Article 30 is, the purpose of this article is to enact regulations to help protect children from exposure to such instruments, devices, or paraphernalia. That's the whole purpose of it. I don't think, in this case, children are being exposed, and I just ask, I mean, maybe we can do an issue paper on it. That should be interesting for it. And study, and just take a time out on this and try and figure out where we want to go as a council. Is that reasonable?
We can always study policy issues and decide if we want to make changes in that area. So yeah, we can do some looking in that area.
What should we do with gentlemen who've invested their entire 401k in a business in Oklahoma City in the interim?
They haven't been cited yet. That's actually only a notice of violation, as I understand it. Bob can confirm that. So
do they have, like, does the 6-month rule apply, or is there a
6 month? Well, if council's going to study it, then management can just hold off issuing a citation.
Well, if we're going to do that, we probably need a council resolution or something to do that. I don't know how.
You want to place a moratorium on enforcement?
That's kind of what I'm thinking
of this particular section.
If that's what we're going to do. I don't know.
But as of today, if somebody were to call, you could cite all 10 Christie's Toy Box operating and generating sales tax in the city.
They could go out and see if they're in violation, and then they would issue them a notice of violation like they did these folks. And yeah.
I mean, the question is, how close are they to parks and residential areas? And I don't know the answer to that.
And public libraries and religious institutions and schools and,
okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, so I'll let you know how things proceed.
Thank you so much for allowing us to speak. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Thank you. Okay, William Fontanez Jr.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and Council. I appreciate it. I will be very brief.
William, can you give your name and address for the record first?
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
It's William Fontanez Jr., 5917 North Roth Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73112.
Thank you.
I'm here to speak about parking enforcement. I own a food truck called La Gumbo Yaya. I've been in business here in Oklahoma City for almost 6 years now. Love the city, and I'm just thankful to be here in Oklahoma City. The food trucks, since I started, have come to the council several times for different reasons. And I'm really proud to be a part of an industry in Oklahoma City that's provided so much revenue to the city. We're talking thousands and thousands of dollars, probably over hundreds of thousands of dollars since in the last 6 years. We've also helped to revitalize the Film Row District, the Plaza District, Midtown, and Uptown through things like H&A and things like that. So we're definitely a part of the community. Not only that, we also work with different organizations to fundraise and things like that. Well, the reason I'm here is there is a code. It's I've got it on my phone. It's a park enforcement code 32-377, and just really quickly, it says parking for more than a time period prohibited, which goes for the parking meters. Many of the parking meters here in the city are 1 hour, 2 hour maximums. For a food truck to safely operate, within the health code requirements and stuff, it almost makes it impossible to be confined to that small time period. Many trucks take an hour just to set up, and then 30 minutes or so to break down. And the way the code is written is once your time's up, you have to actually move your vehicle to another spot. So it could be the next parking space, and then repay the meter. The way we've been doing it for the last 6 years is we've just continued to pay the meter, and it hasn't really been enforced. Currently, and I haven't actually been cited. I will be cited today because my parking meter's run out. But a lot of the food truckers have expressed a concern, and And they're kind of upset about it. One of the things is the food truck is a big vehicle, so it's really easy to spot the food truck that's been there for 4 hours. Junction Coffee that was sitting outside when I came in, if they're still out there, they're in violation of the ordinance. I work with a coalition where we go downtown, we feed the homeless once a month. It's a great opportunity to do that, and the reason we're able to do that is because we can generate the revenue to go out and do those wonderful things. And the great thing about our coalition is that we're not there to feed the homeless and to give them, to feed them. There's plenty of places for the homeless to go and eat a meal and to survive. Our coalition is all about helping them to find resources, building a community on the street that they can actually work with each other. And over the last 4 years, we've seen a lot of them come off the streets and get apartments and stuff, and they've come back and volunteered. So the food trucks are an ingrained part of Oklahoma City culture. So what we're asking is not to completely rewrite the code, but just take into consideration that 2 hours is really tough. And maybe it's just allowing us, because we are bringing in revenue, in 1 hour, we're going to bring in $100 in revenue to the city. And we're talking like a $2 parking fee. Just to allow us to be able to feed the meter, which is part of the vernacular. You hear people say, I got to go feed the meter. Well, in Oklahoma City, that's illegal. We can't just feed the meter. We have to actually move the vehicle. And as you know, here in downtown, food truck takes up 2 spaces, and typically what I do is I feed the meter twice. So I'm buying 2 spaces because I'm using it. I've got the 2 little things on my truck. So it's not like I'm taking up an extra parking space. But when that meter runs out, there's no way I'm going to move that truck to another space because there's not going to be one available. So for your consideration, we would love for you guys to read the code, address it, and possibly change that language and give us the opportunity to work, like I said, not an unlimited amount of time, even 4 hours, or would give us plenty of time to set up safely, make sure our hot water is running, serve, clean up, and leave. We're not asking for something astronomical. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Would you mind speaking with like our transit and parking director, or?
I would love to.
Okay.
We'll set something up so we can talk about. We have addressed this over the years. This is not the first time we've talked about that. And there is a conflict, as you know, between food trucks and brick and mortar restaurants.
Oh, absolutely. And when we first started parking in the Plaza, in the Plaza District, there were no restaurants there. There was one when we first started parking there, and now there's plenty. And same with Uptown and those places. So the food trucks have actually brought in those brick and mortar restaurants to a lot of our areas, which have in turn generated a lot of revenue. And I totally agree. We don't need to be parking food trucks right in front of a restaurant. We're okay with those rules, 100-foot, 200-feet rules. But we're really talking about parking out here where you guys aren't serviced by very many restaurants in this area. And, and without walking down to the Plaza District, or there's just not, there's more people that work down here than the restaurants can actually provide service for. So, just parking across the street, for example.
I'm pretty sure all the restaurants don't agree with that, but that's okay.
Well, and we bring variety to the city. And I do agree. I think we need to work with all of our business owners here in Oklahoma City. It doesn't need to be a frenzy. There's plenty of work in the vineyard, and there's plenty out there for all of us. And if we work together, it can be a good thing for everybody. So, thank you.
All right. Best for last, Michael Washington. Can you give us your name and address for the record?
Absolutely, 100% not guilty. Oh, yes. Michael Washington, 2900 Northeast 18th Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. First of all, to you, acting vice mayor, this Kirk Humphreys, he has got to go. A graphic example of an unethical being that should not be representing a mass majority of people, especially on our schools and OG&E and places where I use electricity and all. I'm like, that man, now I'm not going to say that, because I do have, I believe, a right. And we are going to pick it. I've, as a matter of fact, been approached by several organizations. They say, Michael Washington, we need that fiery spirit of yours to come on down here because we know some action is going to take then. And you know, they're absolutely right. This guy has to go. He must be removed from these trusts around Oklahoma City because trust means I trust you to do the right thing, and I don't trust you with you telling me that the sexual orientation of a person is equal to a pedophile. I mean, is this guy on the same planet I'm on? Especially with rule changes, as I already said in Supreme Court decision, you cannot discriminate against same-sex couples, and you're going to make that preposterous statement. Now you tell me that the courts are incompetent. Wait a minute now. It's maybe a different question now. So everybody's wrong but Mr. Humphreys. Enough of that. I have taken the steps, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, to initiate a preservation of the northeast side of Oklahoma City that we're hoping that the Oklahoma Historic Preservation Commission will agree to preserve the Freedom Center on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. Now, for the most part, we believe that it's going to take a necessary rezoning according to my own research. As you know, all I do is put it together and then we go over the facts. We believe that this is a very historical foundation that needs to be preserved and recognized as the cornerstone of the civil rights movement in Oklahoma, which decentralized, for lack of a better word, as well as desegregated various restaurants, theaters, parks, and we believe that in the dilapidated state that it's in today, it definitely needs renovation. So I have taken the initiation, according to myself and a few of my group, to reevaluate this whole thing. We believe that we have the authority and we're willing to go to court with anyone who has a problem with us doing something that they should have done years ago. Not you in here now, I'm not saying you, but we're talking about some black faces now, and not necessarily this gentleman here, but we now have a few people who have an argument after the building has been condemned, actually closed down since 2010, 2609 Northeast Martin Luther King. Now that Michael Washington wants to step up, there's a question, I don't think he has the authority to be speaking about cleaning it up. Now, why would these city officials and leaders, as well as black owners, business people and civil rights activists, have a problem with Michael Washington doing it if your intent was not to do as you did Calvary Baptist Church, to give it to somebody else? What a mockery of justice for the civil rights movement in Oklahoma. Our attorney now has a church where Martin Luther King came in and gave speeches. Now it's no longer, quote unquote, it's symbolized. It's going to be a graphic church itself. The church building is there, but you have a lawyer's name attached. Are you kidding me? Where people have basically fought and died and been hung and slung down to make movements here in Oklahoma for civil rights of everyone, equal protection of everyone, protecting people from discrimination. You're going to have, come on now. And this is what they want to do. I'm getting ready to close. This is what they want to do with the Freedom Center. But we're not going to let that happen. And so I just wanted to make that statement clear. And if y'all have any questions, you know where to reach me. And as Arnold Schwarzenegger said, I'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have executive session? Okay. So we're ready for that? Okay. We're going to meet in executive session.